No, thank you for coming. We're on.
Good to see you again, Danny.
And you. It's been a long time, and yeah, TJ's been a customer of mine since like right in the early days. When I very first started in a unit where you could barely swing a cat round in it. It was so small. But yeah, we've built up to this, and yeah, it's amazing to see you again with this incredible car that I detailed. How many years ago now? I don't even know.
Yeah, I reckon it was around 2017, maybe 2018.
Yeah.
So, and it's still looking good, and it hasn't had anything other than washers and quick detailer at show. So
that's a good feeling.
that coating that you put on has
done its job. Yeah,
definitely done its job. So.
Yeah. So yeah, tell us about. Well, we'll save talking about this car for a bit. Like just kind of go back to your early memories of cars and where your early sort of passions came from.
So here I am in a Vauxhall. I started as a Ford person.
Okay.
So 1987 when I passed my test at 17, there was limited camps for you to be in, and I went into the Ford camp, and I had a couple of Mark II Escorts, and at the time I was living in Matlock, so I got like all those country lanes to tazz around in.
Around there,
and the Escort seemed the right car. I had also got into motorsport, so I straight away as soon as I passed my driving test. Even before actually, I joined a motor club. So shout out for Mid Derbyshire Motor Club, and I was going on rallies every weekend from marshalling or kind of doing radios or. As time went on, I actually went on rescue units, so doing kind of medical cover and first aid. So I kind of got into motorsport.
Yeah.
And cars and motorsport was completely, new to our family. I hadn't got a mum and dad who were into cars or anything. I mean, some of the wrecks that my dad had us going around in, Morris Itals, Austin Ambassadors, Datsun 180B estates, probably all cool cult cars now, but at the time were just awful. So no, I kind of took my own way in terms of getting into cars, and like I say, out rallying most weekends. So just kind of got into that kind of whole thing, really.
Yeah.
And I've kind of stuck with it to a degree, in and out of doing motorsport in different ways, done a bit of competing myself. But no, the early days I was a Ford person.
Okay.
And that probably kind of brings me on to what hooked me into the Nova. So going on rallies in the late 80s and early 90s, there was a bit of a shift from, Mark II Escorts and Talbot Sunbeams. Front wheel drive cars were getting used more.
Yeah, sure.
And, things like the Talbot Samba, the Nova, they were getting a little bit more credible. And don't forget the Peugeot 205. They were starting to do pretty well in motorsport. So front wheel drive, I'd had rear wheel drive cars. Like I said, I had a couple of Escorts. I'd had a Toyota Corolla Coupe. I shan't mention the brand new Skoda that I bought in 1990. Bought it in the August, and by November 1990, it was up the side of a road on its side.
No, really.
So that got
fleecy, was it?
That got written off. No, it was actually the rear-engined. So they called them the 136 Rapide Coupe. They're
worth some money now as well. Yeah.
Well, it's all those cars that you say I wish I'd kept. When you bought a car and then had to buy another car, you sold it. You sold it, didn't you?
Yeah.
You didn't keep everything. Otherwise, I'd have had a garage like this with all these cars. Well, no, I'd always had rear wheel drive cars, and like I say, when the Skoda got written off, I obviously got a payout, and I'd got this money, and I'd actually never had what seemed like that available money to go out and buy a car.
Yeah.
And it was a combination of things, really. The motorsport side, seeing front wheel drive little hatchbacks, but the real draw to this car was twin 40 Webers.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like the sound of twin 40 Webers?
Exactly,
and just the very thought of having a car with twin 40s was like enough to make me go and
Yeah.
buy this. So when I first bought this, it was the beginning of 1991. So as I say, I'd had my payout for the Skoda incident that had gone, and I needed a car. And I was, scouring adverts, paper adverts as it was, Auto Trader, Midlands version, and various other paper adverts. And I just kind of stumbled across. I didn't really know a lot about the Vauxhall Nova Sport. I just stumbled across it and thought, oh well, that ticks all the boxes. You know, it's a little hot hatch. It's front wheel drive. Got 40s on. I'll have a look at that. And so I bought this car the first time round in I think it was February 1991. I think I went to look at it in January, and by the time I'd done the deal, it was February. So that's when I took ownership of it the first time.
Oh, I didn't realise you'd owned it before.
Yeah, so that's why there's a story and a history behind the car. So I owned it in like I say, from 1991, and probably that summer. No, I'll go back a step. At that time, I was working in a quarry. For people who know Derbyshire and Matlock area, a place called Corder Quarry. There was like a lot of industrial units in the quarry itself. It wasn't just a live quarry. And obviously, I used to take the Nova to work. And if you've ever been into a kind of semi-disused quarry, it's like going into a rally stage. You know, the roads, the conditions of the roads. So my commute to and from work was like doing a special stage every morning and evening, and you know, I absolutely abused the car, and it looked terrible as a result of it, but it was just amazing. And at one point, I've got a photograph of it somewhere. I'd got so many stone chips on it in advance of winter. I'd kind of put cure rust on every stone chip, and they kind of went like a darky grey colour, and it just looked like it had got measles. But at the time, I couldn't afford to get it resprayed, so I just did that as a temporary thing. But no, the summer of 1991, I'd known a girl for years and years. You know, it's a bit twee, but we used to do charity work together with the Red Cross, and we kind of met each other. So I'd known Sam for a few years, and we clearly both liked each other. So I managed to, you know, wangle a date, and it was the beginning of August 1991, and I was light on money at the time, and I hadn't even taxed the car, so I had to borrow some money off my mum and dad, so I could tax the Nova to go out on this date. You can't turn down a date saying, "No, I'm sorry, I can't tax my car."
No.
So I set off in the Nova, and met Sam at and it again. Anybody who knows Derby, the Pennine Hotel used to be a nice hotel in the middle of Derby. It used to have a nice bar underneath it. It's not quite the same in its later life, but that's where we met, so we agreed to meet. So I'd driven in the Nova, and we had a great night, and I took Sam home. She lived just on the outskirts of Derby, so I took her home in the Nova. So it's really poignant because it was our first date car, and next year we celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary. So clearly, either I impressed her or the Nova impressed her.
Nova did a great job.
It's got air horns on. Every car, you know, had got air horns on at that particular time. And I just remember she'd had a few drinks, and I hadn't. I was pretty sober. So she was pressing the horn going up Friargate in Derby under the bridge, and just loved the sound that the car made. So so clearly it worked.
Those Webbers.
It was those Webbers, yeah. So that's why it's got kind of really great memories in the first time I owned it.
Sure.
And the first time I owned it, and I'll come on to this a little bit more later, it had just got the wheel trims on. That was the standard spec for a Nova Sport. Just they called them aerodynamic wheel trims. Everybody either took them off or put alloy wheels on it. But when I owned it, it had got wheel trims on.
And what did they know about aerodynamics back then anyway?
Exactly. I mean, look at the shape of the car, and
Exactly.
if you think those wheel trims are going to make any difference. So yeah, that's the car that we went on our first date in. The kind of almost irony as we kind of, you know, got into a stronger relationship, got engaged, decided we was going to buy a house together. Something had to give, and it was the Nova. So I had to sell it, and I think that was late 1992 because, you know, things had moved on rapidly by that point, and we were looking to put a deposit on a house certainly the kind of following year, and it was actually a relative of mine who offered me really, really strong money. I think about $3,500, which was eye-watering at that time for something like this. And I just said, yeah, I'll sell it. So I took the money, bought another old wreck. It was a Vauxhall Astra that had got so many different colours of paint on it. It was unbelievable. But, you know, it did the job. So the Nova went in 1992. And that relative actually started. The reason why he wanted it is he wanted to start doing motorsport himself. So he started doing road rallies. He then moved into sprints, kind of like short circuit type stuff. And you know, he really got into it. But then I think it was around 94, 95, he needed to go into a different motorsport, or he wanted to go into a different motorsport class.
Okay.
And the limitation of the 1300 engine and the sport was, you know, you couldn't have an increased engine capacity, and it was an up to 1400 class. So he did a straight swap with a mate of his for a Nova SR 1400.
Okay.
And you know, about this time, I started to lose track of where the car had gone. I knew it was being used for motorsport. It was always one of those cars, and we say it all the time, don't we? About, oh, you know, I wish I'd kept that, or if I saw that, I'd buy it back. This was a car that genuinely throughout the time it was out of my ownership, I'd have had it back in a heartbeat if I could afford it. But I lost track of it, and lost track, got on with life, had many different cars, and didn't really think much about owning a Nova and a Nova Sport until 2015. And shall I go on?
Yeah. I'm going to check that's recording and then make sure it's not gone off. It makes me paranoid. This, yeah, we're all good.
So yeah, 2015. Like I say, I was well into cars at that point. Still doing bits of motorsport. And I went to what was it called? It was like a car cafe off Junction 27. Pendragon, the big car company.
I'm not sure. There's been a few, haven't they, all that way? Yeah.
Well, these were one of the early ones to do it. So, you know, 2015, I'd heard about this car cafe, and I think at the time I probably got a TVR. I got a lovely blue TVR 350, the curvy later ones. I thought, oh, this car cafe was free. You know, I think at the time you got a free drink. You know, there was a bacon butty. So I went one I think it was a Saturday morning. Nice gathering of cars, and I'm walking. Because of my OCD, I start at one end and do it in the other. I can't just bimble around. I have to kind of start at one end and finish at the other. And you know, I came across a Nova Sport, and I went up to this chap who was stood with it, you know, clearly the owner, and said, "Oh yeah, Nova Sport. I used to have one of these."
Yeah.
And if you know about the Nova Sport, there was only 500 built.
Okay.
Or allegedly only 500 built. But they were homologation special. So effectively, it was a base model white Nova arrived in the UK. It had got you know, the Daytona tartan seats inside. It had got the 6-dial dash, but it was pretty much a poverty spec Nova. With the exception, it's got the 1300 engine in, and the actual kit, the Nova Sport kit, came in a cardboard box. which
Right.
consisted of the Webers, the inlet manifold, the airbox, various cables and hoses, and an exhaust back box, a red exhaust back box that fitted. And that was the Nova Sport kit. And the stickers, and obviously they were effectively put together when they got into the country, and there was 500 of them made. So when I went up to this guy and said, "Oh yeah, I used to have one of these," he probably thought, "Yeah, everybody says that." And when you actually dig deeper, it was just a normal Nova. And I said, "No, I did." I said, "Yeah, I remembered the reg," and I said, "I ain't got any pictures." I said, "But yeah, amazing car." And his was a completely unrestored original car, a real survival car, and it was in amazing condition. And I just got talking to him, and I found out his name was Richard. And I think at that point, I found out he was in Derby. I didn't know where he was. He said, "Oh, I'm in Derby as well." And we got talking. Then I carried on and looked at the rest of the cars. And that afternoon, I went home, and like you do, you go on the internet, don't you?
Yeah.
Nova Sport. So went on. Any Nova Sports for sale? No, nothing. Where's my old car? So I did a bit of a registration search, and there's been no MOT history since about 2002, and it wasn't showing us tag. So I kind of assumed, well, I'd lost track of it. It had been used in motorsport. There was no history. Must
probably
be
gone.
Buried somewhere. It's probably in a Coke can somewhere.
Yeah.
But then I don't know why I went on eBay and started doing Nova Sport searches and found things that were available for sale. And whatever possessed me, I saw a tyre pressure sticker, an original GM tyre pressure sticker that goes on the driver's door, just kind of on the kind of area just below the lock.
Yeah.
So when you can open the door, you can see what your tyre pressures are. And it was brand new, and it was only about £3 or £4, and it was genuine. And it was in Derby, and it was like, oh, well, perhaps I won't have to pay 99p for postage. I'll see if I can pick it up. So I bought this. Why I bought a tyre pressure sticker, I have no idea. So I bought it and arranged with a guy to go and pick it up. Went to this address on my way home from work, and bloke opens the door. "You, Richard, I met you at a car show a couple of weeks ago." He said, "Yeah." He said, You were serious, haven't you? You did have an Nova Sport." I said, "Yeah, I did." I said, I want another one." I said, "But I don't know how I'm going to get one, and I'm starting collecting bits." I said, "And this is the first thing I bought."
Step one.
And we got talking, and I will add that Richard has become a great friend to me and my family, and been my absolute, most reliable person in helping me with everything I've done with the sport. So it kind of gauged that I was serious about having a Nova Sport again, and he didn't really know of much that was available at the time, but he started kind of putting out a few inquiries, and he said, "Well, whatever happened to your old one?" I said, "Oh, dead and buried, definitely." I said, "But I'll ask around." And I mentioned that when I first sold it, I sold it to a relative.
Yeah.
And then that relative sold it to a friend of his. Well, unbeknown to me, my sister knew that guy who had it back in 1994, 95. And I just dropped her a message and said, "Do you ever have any contact with Andy? The guy who I knew had it." She says, "Yeah, why? I'm friends with him on Facebook, and we message each other periodically." I said, "Oh, just interested in what happened to my old Nova."
Yeah.
And I thought, there'd be a horror story came back.
Yeah.
So I dropped him a message. An hour later, a reply came back saying, "Still got the Nova. It's in his garage. Make him an offer."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "What? Really?" I said, "I've not even seen it." She said, "Well, here's his details. Get in touch with him." And we got chatting. So he had used it for motorsport, and then sadly his wife had got ill, so he kind of pretty much mothballed it. Put it away in the back of a garage. Life life continued without it being used. And I think, you know, it had pretty much been unused since around 2002.
Okay.
So it had just sat in his garage gathering dust and probably slowly rotting away.
Yeah, sure.
But I agreed that, you know, I'd go and have a look at it. And I went to have a look at it. So this would have been, I think, September 2015. And it was wedged. And when I say wedged in the garage, it wasn't just positioned at the back of the garage. It had got stuff underneath it. It had got stuff on top of it. It had got a spare engine and a spare gearbox in the boot.
Oh, really?
Obviously, all the original interior had been taken out and was in the loft over the garage. You know, that was a bit of a saving grace because it kind of kept it in good condition. Yeah. You know, it had had a couple of bucket seats put in. It had had a roll cage put in. But when I started to kind of unpick it, I thought, oh, this looks all right.
Yeah.
It's fabulous. Yeah. And I decided to take Richard, you know, who, like I say, became my kind of go-to guy with Nova Sport. So I took Richard with me, and he looked at it, and he knew all the places to check, and he was just like, it's a shed, it's a nail.
No, really?
It's rotten, you know.
Oh, no.
He says it's going to take a lot of doing, you know, inner wings, outer wings, a whole lot needed doing. But I wanted it.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a Nova Sport again. It was a
it was yours. Yeah.
And you know, even sounds a bit weird. Even the seats, you know, the front seats that had been taken out. It was like me and Sam sat in there. We went on our first date.
Yeah.
So I had to have it, and I said, "Oh, I don't know what a sensible price is." So Richie said, "Oh, you know, make him an offer around this." He said, "You know, the fact that it's still got the original engine and, you know, numbered engine, the original carbs, the interior. It's got all the steel wheels with it, even though, you know, one of them was pretty battered. But, you know, oddly, they were an unusual size and they were really hard to get hold of. So these random 5x13 steel wheels, which are nearly impossible to get hold of. He said, well, it's got the wheels with it, you know, they're worth some money alone. So we kind of did a deal, and you know, for Nova Sport enthusiasts, they'll be absolutely shocked when I say I paid 900 quid for it in 2015 to buy it back. Considering that, like I say, I got all the kind of parts that were sought after. So I got it back, and then I'd like to say that was the easy bit, finding it back. It then had nearly 2 years of a restoration, and I wasn't lucky enough to be able to afford to give it to anybody to do. I got a quote from, let's just say, a very kind of renowned restoration company in Leicestershire, Warwickshire border. The name begins with R.
Okay.
But they're very popular in kind of like, you know, the high end. They did a car for Gordon Murray, so people will know who I mean.
Yeah.
Without seeing the car, I sent photos and I said, this is what I want doing. You know, what would it take? And bearing in mind, this is 2015. They said that will take about 13 grand to restore the shell, just to get it to paint. Nothing else doing, you know, so none of the missing parts replacing, none of the new panels being sourced. It would have been 13 grand just for labour alone. It was like, I'm a bit off more than I can chew. But fortunately, my mate Richard knew somebody, Will, who affectionately became known as Will the Welder.
Will save the day.
He came and looked at the car, and he's a young lad. But I'm not joking. He is like, the work that he does, it's like somebody who's been working in the body shop for 50 years. He is an amazing person with what he can do. And he looked at the car and he said, yeah, do that. No problem.
That's what you want to hear.
And he was like, oh, right. Yeah. Bit this, bit that, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I committed to dismantling the car. I bought a jig. Cleared my garage. I said, you know, you're all right working on here? He said, yeah, fine. I've got a big carport in front of the garage that you could pull out the jig with the shell on if you needed more work. So yeah, he set about doing the bodywork, and I don't think he regrets doing it, and he'll always admit it wasn't that bad, but it had a lot to be done. So, I mean, externally, every panel that can be replaced has been replaced with new, genuine stuff. Stuff that came from all over all over Europe primarily, because a lot of the stuff was unavailable in the UK. But at the time, there was a bit better availability in Europe. So, Luxembourg, Holland, Germany. So bonnet, front wings, front panel, the bulkhead and the battery tray area, inner wings, chassis legs, doors, boot, rear arches, rear inner arches, sills, all replaced or I'd work on.
Was it all just rotting away then that was there before?
Horrible repairs. Right. Like, truly awful. I mean, the floor under the driver's seat at some point had a repair. I think just to strengthen it, to put the bucket seat on. Right. We worked out the metal that had been used was probably the size of a metal filing cabinet. And it had just been cut and kind of welded on. So rotten stuff, and as you dug deeper, it kind of was more rotten and hidden away.
Sure, yeah.
And like I say, ropey repairs. The worst job, and we'll confirm this even now, and I think you've still got nightmares about it, was the roof. Because when I first owned it in 1991, somebody had put a sunroof in it.
Oh, wow.
It had a glass pop-up sunroof installed. I don't think it was a genuine one, and it certainly wasn't on the original spec sheet. So it was definitely not the right thing to have.
Yeah, sure.
But then when it got used for motorsport, somebody had simply plated it over. So it took away the metal, or the alloy plate that was over it that had been riveted on. There was just a hole where the sunroof had been.
Right.
So we decided that to restore it back to true originality, it needed to have a proper roof on. So the roof was an absolute nightmare.
I can imagine, yeah.
To get it right, and Novas generally have a little bit of a dip in the roof at the back over time, so it's been really hard to kind of eradicate that.
Yeah.
But, it got to where it did, and so while Will was doing all the welding and restoration, and in a lot of cases fabricating parts by hand, because there just wasn't the part available.
No.
So we had to search for images, work out what the shape was, particularly around the sills and the rear arches. That was all kind of hand fabricated, and repair panels were cut to shape. Then in the end, while it was still on the jig, we completely painted the underside of it, and it's a decision I kind of, in one way, I'm glad I did it, but in other ways I regret, because what we did was we kind of did epoxy paint as the base paint underneath. Because the cell had been soda blasted and then primered before all the welding work, so it was back to bare metal. But we decided to go with Raptor, Raptor paint, body coloured.
Yeah,
so it was white underneath.
Yeah,
and it looked stunning when it was done.
Yeah,
over time. It's clean.
Yeah,
but over time it's a nightmare. So that's one thing I think would have done it differently. But no, we kind of got it, or Will got it to a state. All the panels were kind of test fitted, and it went off to get painted at the end of 2016. And another guy who did it, I'll give him a shout out, Andy. Everybody says, "Oh, what have you done to the paint? Why have we got it? Why is it so good?" Apart from what you've done on it. It was one shot out the gun. So you did the interior entirely first, so that the floor, the engine bay, everything inside. The paint is as good on the inside as it is on the outside.
It is a great job. I see so many bad jobs nowadays. So many.
So he effectively, it was one hit, and it looked stunning. And then when I kind of built it up, and after sourcing lots and lots of missing bits, and paying a premium for stupid parts.
Didn't you pay an extortionate amount for the gear knob or something, and the radio and bits? Yeah,
the radio blank. Well, originally when I had it, it had a stereo in, and it had the parcel shelf cut for big speakers. Well, the restoration, I was going back to what it should be. So it's a radio blank, like a little plastic trim that fits in where the radio goes, with a little coin tray in it.
Right.
Oh, and it took me ages to find one. I ended up having to pay about 120 quid for something that was probably ripped out back in the late 80s, early 90s, and thrown away.
In the bin,
the parcel shelf, it took me 3 or 4 attempts to get a decent parcel shelf. I bought one, and it didn't look right. It was too faded. And again, I think I paid a few hundred quid just for parcel shelves. But you think, oh God, I've still got the original one that I cut into. I ought to hang it on the garage wall to remind me what you do with
how much that cost you long term.
what you do as a youth at the time. So yeah, just sourcing parts. But once it came back from the bodywork, like I say, the end of 2016, they aren't a difficult car to put together.
No.
Like I say, with Richard's help, with Will and another mate who actually used to rally in Nova Sport, so he knew his way around. And a guy called Simon, who we all lived close to each other. Between the 3 and 4 of us, we just kind of managed to get it put together. And as I say, they're not complicated. Things like the wiring loom were difficult, not for me, for Richard, because he was a perfectionist. And the wiring loom that come with the car, it was
chopped to bits.
Scotch lock heaven. Just some really horrible things. Probably some of them that I'd done when I first owned it. I think I put that in, but there was lots of Scotch lock. It had a battery cutout switch. It had a rev limiter put in. So, things that were put in for kind of motorsport reasons that just completely ruined the loom. So we managed to track down another loom, and largely they were all the same. If you hadn't got a rear wash wipe, the wiring was in the loom. It was just taped away. So we had to kind of methodically go through this loom and make it ready. And that was a time-consuming job. But in the main, it went together pretty well and pretty quickly. So by end of March 2017, so only about 3 months over winter after I got it back from the body shop, it was going for its first MOT.
Nice.
So I trailered it there, borrowed my mate's trailer and van. I trailered it there, and it passed the MOT. Just needed the tracking, just kind of setting up a little bit. But for saying we'd built it, 2 or 3 guys in a garage, effectively, with a bare minimum of tools, we put it together. So the MOT guy, another Simon, another guy who I've known for years through motorsport. So a bit of a shout out for 2010. 2010 motorsport, 2010 racing, 2010 garage services down at Little Eaton. He's always done my MOTs, and even he was impressed. We've known each other a long time, and he gives me a lot of stick about cars. He said, "You've done a good job of this."
Fair play to you.
I then put it back on the trailer and took it to a rolling road place up in Chesterfield. When I first owned it, I always used to use a guy called John Noble. John Noble, I think it was John Noble Engineering at the time, and he was a bit of a rolling road motorsport guru, and he knew about these cars, and he set it up really well. So for some reason I decided to go back to the business, even though it changed hands. And the same people, and they just couldn't set it up.
Oh, really?
They just could not get it to run right. And in the end, they said, "We think it's the carburetors." So as part of the restoration, I'd had the carbs completely refurbished, but it just wouldn't set up right. And we tried everything. We took the head off again. The engine builder redid the valves. Everything that you could possibly think of, we tried. And it wasn't until we took the carbs off and started to dismantle them that we noticed one of the spindles was slightly twisted. Just enough to mean that, because there's obviously 4 butterflies, one of them wasn't closing fully.
Right.
And it was enough to make it absolutely awful on static setup. But actually, once you got it running and driving, because the flies open, it was fine, but it just
idling basically.
Idling, it was a nightmare. And in the end, I kind of got so despondent with it. Apart from threatening to sell it, I got another set of carburetors. I managed to find another set of genuine Nova Sport carburetors because, again, the carburetors, the Webers on them are unique to the Nova Sport.
Yeah, sure.
They've got certain things on that only the Nova Sport carbs had. So I managed to find another set locally, and we've got them refurbished and managed to get it set up and running. But I'd missed a bit of a deadline. Originally, I wanted it to be ready in May 20. Well, I do maths now. May of 20.
I'm going to check that's working while you work here. Yeah, we're all good.
Yeah. Why 20? Why 2016? I know why. I wanted it to be ready for August 2016.
Right, okay.
Because that would have been the 25th anniversary for me going on that first day with Sam.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to take you out in the car again to celebrate 25 years. And it wasn't ready. So it then got pushed back. And it kind of was getting near our 25th wedding anniversary by the time it was done. But no, it was, for saying how difficult it was in terms of the bodywork, to turn it around in just under 2 years.
Yeah, I understand the work that goes into this.
When people say nut and bolt rebuild, it wasn't just the fact that things were refurbished. So much stuff was missing.
Yeah.
I really wanted to get as near to genuine stuff as possible. I've done upgrades to it, and when I first met you, and you first detailed it around 2017, 2018, it's got alloy wheels on. I found a set of alloy wheels and I put them on. And I'd had the steel wheels refurbished. I'd managed to find a new set of the proper wheel trims and I'd had them painted. But I thought, no, I'm going to bin the steel wheels and I'm going to put the alloy wheels on it. So yeah, when you first did it and saw it got alloys on, well, it was pretty much as it is now. And as I mentioned, you coated it back then, and it's not had anything since.
That's great. Honestly,
I've done 2,000 miles in it. I know that doesn't sound a lot in kind of, what is it, 6 years. But for this kind of car, going to shows, it doesn't get trailing anywhere or driving everywhere. It's been out in the rain. Like I say, when it gets dirty underneath, it drives me mad. But I wash it properly. I use the good old 2-bucket method. I replace my wash me. I use decent stuff, stuff that you recommended way back then. But it hasn't had any polish or wax or anything on it since. And it's just, well, it still shines. So credit to you, but also I guess credit back to Andy for the paintwork they did, and credit to Will for getting the bodywork ready for paint.
Honestly, I see some shockers. I did a mini sport not too long ago. The guy had 3 quotes for it, and one of them was £18,000. Wow. And not even the roof. So the roof was original. And he went. So he had one at about 7, one at about 12, one at 18. He went for the one in the middle. It was absolutely, you'd think for £12,000 on a car that size, where the roof's not even being done, and a lot of the car was already stripped, a lot of the prep work was done, you'd think that car would be concourse, It really wasn't. I had to wet sand it. There was areas where I was like, I can't do anything with that. It's not good enough for me to do anything with. The integrity's not there. Do you know what I mean? It was £12,000. It's like, well, it's wild.
I mean, if I look back and I did keep a list and a spreadsheet of how much I was spending at the time, and it got to a point where I thought, if Sam sees this, questions will be asked. Why are you spending this much money? These were, I think, 5,800 quid brand new in 1985. Why are you spending that amount of money? But bearing in mind, I got some amazing support from people who did, all the welding and fabrication and body prep work, in their own time at minimal cost. The paint job, it went into actually a Vauxhall dealer, because that's where the guy was working at the time, at a weekend, and was done in a Vauxhall spray booth. But I didn't pay dealer prices for the work. So
it's done through passion, isn't it? It's the passion, it's the support, the community.
Absolutely, and I couldn't have done it without those people. And but equally, the cost is eye-watering in terms of what I spent on it. But I wanted to do it once, and I wanted to do it right.
Yeah.
But likewise, the cost would have been probably double if I'd have had to pay people, to do it as part of a profession. So as you say, it's kind of the passion of the people involved, and every single person who, I don't regret meeting them and them doing the work that they did. Because sometimes you get people who think, I wish I'd got them to do it. I should have gone with that person, but Richard introducing me to Will. Richard and Will introducing me to Andy, who did the paintwork.
Good people attract good people, isn't
absolutely,
it? So you have a good
absolutely.
community,
So it is, as I say, it's credit to them that it's ended up like it did. But yeah, so the Nova was done, and I use it. I saw it over the winter, but I use it during the summer. Was going to car shows on a regular basis. I think one of its early car shows, it won an award, best classic or best 80s classic, I think it was. So that was kind of a nice recognition for the work that had been done to it. But no, like I say, I use it and I enjoy it, and some of the kind of upgrades that I've done that are kind of a little bit hidden. I've done it to make it more drivable. So it's got a quick rack steering, because the steering and the massive original steering wheel, it's like, it feels about 15 turns lock to lock. So it's got a quick rack on, and I've kind of put the later, smaller steering wheel on it.
Stuff they should have done while it was new, kind of thing.
and oddly enough, Danny, stuff that I wish I'd done when I first owned it, but probably couldn't afford to do it.
Yeah, sure.
The original idea was for them to come with vented discs on the front, but to save money, it just came with like solid discs, because they knew that people who were going to convert them for motorsport would have done brake upgrades anyway. So I put the kind of what would have been the correct vented discs on out of the factory if they'd have gone with that spec.
Yeah, sure.
It's got Bilsteins on, so again, that was the go-to motorsport upgrade, but they've got better and better over the years, and they kind of look a little bit more OE, so it's got kind of Bilstein suspension on. But in the main, I did it to kind of look pretty standard. I wouldn't say concourse, because that was never the intention, because I knew that it's a difficult line between having something concourse and keeping it concourse versus having something that you actually want to drive and enjoy.
Concourse, you can't drive it to shows.
No, so I remember the old days of having a Cosworth and the RS Owners Club. They had almost a category, what they called working class concourse.
Yeah.
So it at the time that would have kind of fitted perfectly. So I did things to make it more usable, but I do like to keep it nice and clean, as you know. But no, it's been used, and then COVID came along, and like a lot of things, it kind of didn't get much use. I started toying with the idea of selling it. It was like I'd done all that work. I think we were talking earlier about the classic car market went through the roof during COVID. Prices went through the roof, and I thought it's now a good time to cash in. Maybe I'll get some return. And strangely enough, my daughter, my eldest daughter, just before COVID came along, had got engaged. Yeah. And as she did, she's a bit of a planner and was planning ahead for a wedding, so she got engaged beginning of 2020, just before COVID hit us, and she was planning to get married in 2022. Yeah, last year. So she got 2 years of planning, but she completely flummoxed me. Good old dog, she's saying, flummoxed me by saying, "Will you drive me to a wedding in the Nova?" And it was like, really? I says, because she's a bit of a kind of likes everything that she can't afford. And I thought, are you being serious? She says, no, because you picked Mum up to go in on the first date in the Nova, I'd like you to drive me to the wedding. So I was like, I can't sell it now.
Yeah,
I've got a commitment for it in 2 years' time. So
she stayed.
So it stayed, and I thought better keep on top of it. It's like any project; it never really finishes. So you find things, you find another parcel shelf that's better than the one you've got. You find bits of trim or things that you didn't necessarily do because you couldn't find them or couldn't afford them at the time. So I just kept on top of it.
Nice.
And then had a difficult time in 2021 in the run up to the wedding. I got diagnosed with cancer, with bowel cancer, and like anybody who's had a cancer diagnosis, thought the world was ending. And I even started making contingency plans. If I couldn't drive Emily to the wedding, Richard, the guy who I met all that time ago and has stayed a great friend, I said, if I can't drive the Nova, will you drive the Nova to take Emily to the wedding? Because I felt like I got a bit of an obligation. But fortunately, with the wonders of the NHS and some surgery and some chemotherapy, I say cured. I didn't know I was cured at the time, but they worked wonders with me, and I finished my chemotherapy. Was it 2 weeks before the wedding? Thereabouts. And there was a real nervousness because I was ill. I was really ill. Not only primarily with the chemotherapy. And do you still want to drive me to the wedding? It was like absolutely.
Whatever it takes.
I will be at that wedding and I'll be driving you the Nova. But then I asked her a stupid question, and that comes back to the wheel trims. I built up a bit of a collection of alloy wheels.
As you do.
So I've got various options. I could go with the motorsport look that Nova Sports had at the time. The 5-spoke or Revolution RFXs. I've got another set of wheels. I've got the original wheel trims and steel wheels. And I just said to Emily, what wheels do you want on it? What wheels do you want on it? And I sent her a picture, and this is like maybe a month before the wedding. I was clearly bored with being stuck at home and being ill. What wheels do you want on it? And she just replied and said, well, what did you have on it when you picked Mum up? I said, well, it was steel wheels at the wheel trim, and sent her a picture of what it looked like. She said, can I have it like that? So in 2022, I got it out of the garage and swapped the wheels over and put the wheel trims back on, and I've fallen back in love with it.
It suits it.
And loads of people have said, "Oh, it does look nice with it. It's nice to see it with the wheel trims on." So that's why it's got the wheel trims on and not the alloy wheels that you.
I suppose even then, people would have just took them straight off, wouldn't they? So even when they were pretty new,
fall off. I remember the 4 cable ties on each that I had at the time. Just tazzing it through a quarry, you were in danger of losing the wheel trim. So, it's got cable tied wheel trims on. So, I put it back to that, and I just kind of fell in love with the look of it again, and it looks right. So,
did it have compa motives on it at one point?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I think that's what it had when it came.
I think they were the multi-spoke ones, and I'd had them refurbished in anthracite grey or something like that. And I'd gone with that because I wanted something different, because everybody had like white wheels of some form, either like 5-spoke RFXs or kind of like the OZ type wheels, but everybody was putting certain kind of types of wheels on and certain colours. So I just thought, I've always liked grey, darker grey wheels, so I had that on. And at the time, I thought, it looked different, but over a number of months and years, I kind of just fell out of love with them. I thought they look odd on it, so I kind of joined the masses and I put 5-spoke alloys on. Interestingly, off a Mini, a later Mini, the Ronal wheels that come on a later Mini pretty much fit these perfectly, and they were a cheap way into a 5-spoke alloy wheel, and quite a nice looking wheel. So I'd gone down that route, but then, like I say, when Emily said, "Can I have it how it was when you took Mum out," and it went back to Steels, and they've been on ever since, and took it to a few shows this year. Took it to a big classic car show at Tatton, and it won Best Hatchback of the event.
No.
Now, bearing in mind there was a lot of kind of Mark II Escorts and Mark III Escorts, Mark IV Escorts, Fiestas. So, some of the ones that have become mega priced, but mega sought after, and good restorations are kind of quite popular. I thought I was amongst a kind of difficult group of cars. So when I got this little ticket on saying you won an award, I thought, well, it's probably just best Vauxhall Nova of the show. But no, I won best hatchback of the show. So
amazing.
So 6 years on, after it was finished and after it was ceramic coated, it's still winning awards at shows.
And hopefully she's going to be ready for you to use next year for your 30th wedding anniversary.
That's the plan. That's the plan. And I haven't broached the subject about going somewhere in it, because needless to say, we're both 30 years older and getting in and out of the car, and so what I loved about the sound of it, the smell of it, they always, anything with Webbers, they've always got a bit of a petrol-y smell. Sure. That's not quite as popular now. Well, not just for Sam, but for me. So I will persuade.
Yeah, I think you need to retrace some steps and almost take it on the same kind of, was it Friday you said, was just pressing the horn and stuff, almost retrace that.
Absolutely, it's a pity we can't go for a drink. Well, it's probably not a pity actually, in the bar that was under the Pennon hotels, because that's been demolished now. But no, it would be nice to kind of do something. Even if it's not necessarily celebrating the 30th wedding anniversary.
Mm.
Even just something around the anniversary of going out on the first day. So,
definitely.
But I'll start the conversation.
Get the ball rolling.
And see if we can get the interest in it.
And do you think you would ever do something like this again on another car, or do you feel like you've scratched that itch?
I think I've scratched that itch.
Yeah.
Like I say, I'd love cars. I'd always had cars. I'd always tinkered with cars, but I'd never done anything of this scale. And I got lucky with the people who helped me out. But people have said, you get mates sending you links to restoration projects and Novas, and fancy doing that. It's like, absolutely not.
The footage looks great, doesn't it? It's when you've done it and you see what it's like on the inside. It's very different to how the videos look on YouTube.
Absolutely, and I just think about going into the garage, particularly over the winter, and looking at the shell on the jig and thinking we're never going to get it done.
Yeah.
It's just too much. We've bitten off more than we can chew here. When I was trying to find parts and just getting so frustrated with either being able to find them or the cost of them, because people were getting wise to, a bit like they say there's like an RS or a Cosworth tax or a Ford tax.
They're doing a Porsche as well, Porsche tax, it's ridiculous.
There was a bit of a Nova tax starting to kind of appear in pricing, particularly Nova Sport type stuff. So even then, some of the stuff was like, as I say, a coin tray for the radio, 120 quid for a bit of plastic. Things were 2015, 2016 were getting pricey.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I probably wouldn't do it again, because I think, why would I spend that amount of money on something?
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I hated it equally.
Yeah.
But I like what I've ended up with, and it's almost like if you do it again, will it ever be as good as what
you've done it with the perfect car, haven't you? It's like the car that meant a lot to you. It's like there's no other car that would have that same. You'd have the same drive and passion for, is it? Because it's not going to have history.
There isn't. And, there was another car that I kind of thought, well, if I could find that, I would have contemplated in that. It was a Toyota Corolla Coupe that I had in the late 90s, and again, they're mega sought after rear-wheel drive.
We just detailed one about a month ago,
And it's like, would I do one of those? I had a Cosworth, a Sapphire Cosworth, in the late 90s. Again, one of those cars that I think I sold, mainly because at the time the price was right for selling it, but I got $6,000 for it. And when you think about how much there was, and that was a 3-owner car, it had got about 55,000 miles on it. I'd done sensible upgrades, but it was really, really nice.
Yeah.
And it was one of those that, at the time, there was on the back of the price drop due to insurance, so you couldn't give them away for a period. So £6,000 for me at the time was strong money, and it kind of, I think it went towards a bit of a kind of upgrade of the house that we was living at the time. When I was doing this, I tracked it down. I found it in Ireland. The guy might have sold it, but he was at the time looking for £20,000 for it, and it was like.
And they're way more now, aren't they?
Way more. I wouldn't say it needed work, but it had a lot of modifications done that I wouldn't necessarily kind of want. So I want to get it back nearer to standards. So I thought I can't do it. I can't justify doing that again. So no, I don't think I would do another one.
No.
I've done it. I've got it out of my system.
Yeah. And do you think you'll keep this? Like, is it a forever car, or do you think you will?
I've had wobbles.
Yeah, we all do. Trust me.
My friend Richard, with the sport that got me into it, he sold his this year, and like I say, his was a stunning, unrestored example.
Yeah.
And I think it's set a bit of a ceiling now in terms of the price that you could sell one for. Yeah. So when I heard that, I thought, could I sell mine? What could I get with it? Could I sell one of my other cars and then, just go to something? And you go through all those kind of ideas.
Yeah.
But then I think this to me is almost like a pension fund now, a bit of an inheritance. It gets wrapped up in the garage when it's not in use. I've got a dehumidifier in there. I've got a little oil-filled radiator just to keep the temperature right. Just what you want when electric costs a fortune. And I get told about how we look after the garage better than we look after the heating on the house, but that's not really true. But I don't want it to deteriorate. And like I say, I see it as a bit of a pension inheritance. The kind of illness that I had kind of gave me a little bit of a wake-up call. What would I do? And it's like, well, if I needed or we needed money because we were in a difficult position health-wise or not working, at least I've got this as an option.
It may as well be sat like that, and then sat in the bank, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Because that's an appreciating asset, and in the bank it's not doing anything.
No, it isn't. So I kind of decided to stick it out. And as I say, the fact that Emily wanted me to take her to a wedding was a bit of a good motivator for keeping it.
Yeah.
And there's some days if I've been I went to the national Vauxhall Bedford Opal Association show down at Sywell in Northamptonshire in July, and the weather was horrendous. Yeah. It just seemed to rain all weekend, and the car was wet, I was wet. Yeah. And I came home from that thinking, I've had enough of this. I've had enough of this lot. Yeah. It was up on axle stands, cleaning it, particularly underneath, trying to get it back. I think I can't do with this every time that I go out, and
it ruins it a little bit, doesn't it?
But then I got in it today, and I hadn't used it for about a month, maybe 6 weeks. I uncovered it, and it looked like it did. And I thought, it does look nice. And I got in it, and I drove down here today, and I just thought, I can't sell this.
Sometimes having it out of sight a little bit is like the best thing. If it's always, you can see it all the time, it's always in your vision, it's like you almost become bored of it, don't you? You're bored of it. I do it with my Porsche. If I stored it away in the winter, I didn't look at it, covered it over, I didn't look at it. And I remember taking that cover back off and thinking, God, that's mine. Wow. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't believe I thought about selling this. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it just refreshes it again. Then you drive it, you get that feeling again, and it's just fresh again.
And the good thing was, before I kind of put it away, yes, it was cleaned inside and out within an inch of its life, because it was wet, it got wet and dirty. And I'm really glad I did that, then covered it up, then went away for the summer and went on holiday and did things. Because if I'd have uncovered it or kind of gone into it, it was like, I need to clean it, it's a mess. I'd have probably felt differently, but like I say, getting in it today and thinking, it's all clean, I don't need to do anything. Yeah. And driving over here, just put a bit of petrol in, as you can smell. Yeah. I thought, this is great. And coming down the A52, it can hold its own with modern cars. It's small, it's light, it's had some subtle engine upgrades, but it's only pushing out about 100, 101 horsepower.
Yeah.
But it's
still going to shift in a car like that.
It's still fun to drive, and
you can use all 100 horsepower.
You
in
can,
it, which in a lot of cars you can't do nowadays.
And people look at it, and people are interested in. Even when I go to shows, the amount of people who say, "I learned to drive in a Nova."
Yeah.
I didn't realise how popular they were. I mean, as I say, when I first got into cars, I was in the Ford camp, and this sport was my first kind of foray into the Vauxhall camp.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think there was much of a kind of appeal to them, but the amount of people said, "I don't know, I love my Nova SR," or
it's nostalgia, isn't it?
It is. So they were clearly a popular car in the day, and they are getting thin on the ground now. But the show we went to at Trentham, where it won the award, we was on a stand and there was about 20 Novas, or Corsas actually. There was a couple of, because in Europe they're known as Corsa, it's Opel Corsa, effectively the same car. There was a couple of guys came over from Holland with them as well, so it was nice to see around 20 similar cars. So they're still out there, but as I say, they're getting thinner on the ground. And
well, they're getting to a value now, aren't they, where people aren't going to be using them, they're just going to be sat in places like they're just kind of sat, aren't they, not being touched.
Or rotting away.
Exactly.
And there was a danger with when I bought it back, that if I hadn't have met Will and he hadn't have said, "Yeah, I'll do it," I think it would have just sat in my garage and rotted and never been done. But I was lucky that I got somebody who was, I'll do that, and I know a guy who can paint it. That kind of gave me the motivation to do it. So I think again, going back to the question about would I do it again, I felt lucky with people and timing, and yes, I managed to buy it back for 900 quid, but it cost north of 20 grand, I would say, over the time to do the restoration. As I said, the body panels, I was relatively lucky, but doors, now new genuine doors, if you can find them, you'd be paying 600-800 quid each.
A lot of money.
so you kind of add all those bits together, and before you've even started, it becomes eye-watering now. So like I say, I got lucky with people and what I managed to find, and the help I had.
And it's hard to do it with any car now, isn't it? There's cars that I look at that I think, well, should I get one of them, restore it? And then I think, well, let's look at how much the bits are. And you think, oh my God, you'd have to remortgage your house. And do you know what I mean? It's like you put yourself in a bit of a hole trying to put that one together. And it's
absolutely. A friend of mine, Simon, like I say, I know a few Simons, so there was a few Simons who helped. There was a Simon who got the garage in the MOT place who helped on one thing. But there's another Simon who ironically I knew for a long time through motorsport, but unbeknown to me, he knew Richard. So there was like always a bit of a connection, but he's just bought a Peugeot 309. And again, it's a real survivor car, but one of the things that it didn't come with was a bonnet. And you think, must be a doll. No, couldn't find a bonnet or a decent bonnet. Fortunately, found one in Calais, of all places, and one of our Dutch friends who came over last weekend called via Calais to pick up this 309 bonnet. But as you say, some of the things that at the time, I guess the scrappage scheme that we had destroyed a lot of so probably good cars got scrapped because the incentive was there. But that means that things like I thought it's fairly easy. There was loads of 309s around. Mission Impossible, and it's getting a little bit like that with the Novas. And there is should I have done a Ford Escort with hindsight? Probably yes, if I wanted to kind of revisit my early car ownership, because you can get pretty much everything for a Ford Escort, either remanufactured or new.
Because the following's there for them.
There isn't that following for the Nova. There isn't anybody reproducing stuff. Even those people who 3D print certain plastic parts. They're only just starting to do things with the Nova, and that might be because they've explored all options. But some of the more popular restoration options, like the Escort, they're probably a bit more viable. But also that you need a lot of money to do it properly as well now.
No, they can. That's it. They can catch people out because if they're part way through a build and they know they need that part, you are going to pay whatever it costs.
And you know, to a degree, some of that happened with me. I got lucky. I bought 3 or 4 gearboxes with the aim of building one gearbox out of these various parts. So I got one that had got a good casing, but it got the wrong internals. I got another one that had got the right ratios, but was in an incorrect casing and was scabby. I bought all these bits, and then Richard let me know about a company in Germany that had got a brand new gearbox, and it was about €280 delivered to the UK. It was the last one that they'd got, so I just magnet, brand new gearbox,
amazing,
and got rid of effectively all these kind of bits and bobs, and probably paid for the brand new gearbox. But that was pure fluke. You know, if anybody tried to do that now, you would not be able to find a new gearbox.
If they knew how hard it was to get hold of one, I'm sure they would have knocked it up a little
bit. Absolutely. But you know, there was a period of time, and kind of Richard has told me stories. You know, he went to Albert Looms and which was a scrap place. It still is a scrap place in Derby, and you know there were Novas all over the place. And you know, I buy that seat for a tenner. I buy that bit for £2. He can remember doing trips to Europe and loading up with body panels that they were almost giving away.
Imagine now, it's like, imagine if you just had a unit like this just full of bits. I mean, you'd be a millionaire, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, and you know, when I started thinking about, should I sell it, I've accumulated a lot of parts as well, spare bits, and some of them are quite sought after and quite valuable. Others are kind of, not worth a lot, but those carburettors, the original set of carburettors that I mentioned, they were refurbished. The bit that was missed was the bent spindle. Now, if somebody's got the time and inclination, I could probably do it. That's a set of carburettors that's got some value, and they only need a little bit of a repair and a rebuild and some bits replacing. But at the moment, I'm just kind of sitting up and holding on to them because they're useful for me. I've got another set of seats that I managed to find, and some fabric, some new fabric. So I've got another set of seats being retrimmed. I probably don't need them, but
it's all little improvements.
Improvements.
And you've still got a lot of value in the ones that are in there.
Absolutely. So there's, I haven't got masses of parts. I cleared a lot of stuff out, but I've kind of, what I call consumable stuff. So I've got, clutches, alternators, distributors, service parts, brakes, and things like that. But I haven't got masses of other parts. But I've got enough to think, well, if that breaks in the next 5 years, I've got a replacement. Because stuff will become harder to get hold of.
You sell it cheap now. I mean, when you go to buy it again, you're going to think, why did I get rid of that?
And that's what I thought. Rather than selling the car, why don't I get rid of the parts? And it's like, well, as long as I've got the car, I really do need
the parts.
So I've whittled the stock down a little bit, and it's a sensible amount in the garage. But just enough to keep it, hopefully, in the condition it's in now.
It's a real credit to you and the people obviously around you that have supported you to get this to the level it's at, because it's phenomenal. It's always been like I've always got a list of cars that I class as my favourite ever details of every car I've had, and this has always been in that list.
You've always said that, and I can remember coming to your other units where you got photos up, and I go, that's a Nova, that's a Nova, and it's like but I guess that when you were, because it was probably in the early days of when you were starting out, that's what kind of drew me to you doing it, because you'd had quite an eclectic mix of cars in it, vans actually.
I did a GT3 RS, I think, like a couple of weeks after this as well. You know what I mean?
And a motorbike. I think you did a motorbike as well.
BMW.
So it was like it just added to a bit of a kind of portfolio, I guess, that we were building up.
I don't even think the GT3 ended up on the wall, but there's no reason.
The Nova did, yeah, and rightly so.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's the passion, you know. It's like that's what I love. It's like we can, you know, if you've got a lot of money, you can buy an expensive car. Yeah, great, but that is a passion. You know, there's real blood, sweat, and tears that's gone into that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you've had your ups and downs with it, and that's what I enjoy. Because the people around that are both characterful people as well. You know, the people with a story, an interesting story. The car's got a story. You know, it's I love all that.
And there's probably so much more I could say about the car and story going with it. You know, even me and what I've done with cars. But I think there's just something about this car that I started a bit of a kind of online thread about the restoration, and I called it something like Nova Sport Project 1991 to 2015 because I was trying 2016 I think I was trying to get it done quickly. And I started just telling the story a bit like I've kind of probably said some of it today, but I started writing it down. And after about 3 or 4 posts, I put a post up saying, "Is anybody actually reading this?" I said, "Because is it just rubbish? Am I just talking crap?" And the amount of people who replied and said, "This is amazing. You've got to keep this going." And I've kept that thread going from 2015. Even now, I periodically update it and say, nothing much has happened. I put the wheels and wheel trims back on. Been to a couple of shows, won an award. But and I guess the other thing is, this is on it's Performance Nova Group forum, which is a traditional website forum, and people have moved away from forums, haven't they? They moved to Facebook and groups, and then Instagram and YouTube. But actually, I look back at that thread, and it is a story about this car, and unless anything happens to that website and it gets shut down. It's written down. It's a story about
diary, and that's why I started the YouTube, because it was just a chance for me to sit and talk to people, and talk about these cars, because I don't think that they're shared enough, really. There's the stories of the people that are the billionaires that have got 50 cars, blah, blah. Yeah, great, amazing, well done. But what about the normal sort of day-to-day people that have got the real genuine passion for these cars, where it's not all about money being thrown at something and just going, I'll take it there, they'll do everything, and then I'll just go, wow, look at my car. Like you've had to put real work into this car, or the people, you built a team, a friendship,
Yeah. And that's it. There is that kind of that life beyond the car itself. And people come up to me at shows and talk to me about it, but you can't spend an hour or 2 hours telling them the whole story. You have to give them little snippets. And like I said, that's why I liked writing it down in this kind of forum thread that I did, and that's why I'll talk for England. I
love it.
I will keep going, but I like to share that, because, as you say, it's not just about the car; it's about the kind of whole life and the relationships and the friendships that you build up. And who'd have thought that? Back at that unit, when we kind of we didn't squeeze the Nova in, it kind of was all right. Here we would be, however many years later, looking back at that and filling in some of the gaps about what's happened in it. Here we are in this kind of great place. My first time down here, I think when you first opened, I messaged you and said, "Can't wait to come down to you. I'm probably due a car that needs doing. You've done this, but you did a Vauxhall Monaro for me that
that was stunning.
The red, what you did to that red paintwork, you did my C63 that I've still got, and I still look at the pictures that you took of it in the studio after it was done, and that's really lasted.
Still got that picture somewhere. It's got my Octavia in the front.
It has
wheels on. Complimented.
But that was another white car that you did for me, and I think at the time you did one of your kind of same day packages, but you put an extra ceramic coat on it, and you said, look, because of the time that I've had it, I can only put like a limited
like a year or something.
A year on it. But I've had that car now 3 years and it still looks amazing. So whatever you're doing and whatever you're putting on, and it's credit to you. And like I say, that's why it's nice to come back and talk about the car again.
Yeah, it's been great having you. It's like another guy obviously came today that, you know, dropped off another car that was like something really, you know, it's so cool just going back to right, you know, at the beginning, remembering my beginnings as well within this industry. You know, meeting the clients that are still stuck by me even now, it's a great feeling.
And you know, I know, like a lot of businesses, particularly during COVID, it was hard, and you know, there's probably some really dark days for you. You know, you're on your own, you're trying to survive, and I can remember coming to see you at your place in the middle of Derby, and I think that was with the Monaro, and I think then with the Merc again, and it was like. It had been a difficult time for most people, but you know, it's great. I mean, who'd have known the Porsche itch would have been so well scratched by this? You know, some of the stuff that you've got in here, and you know what we've been looking at today, it's just amazing. So you know, people need to come and visit you. You know,
I appreciate that. Yeah, we keep going. You know, it's been like you said, it's been rocky. There's been many ups and downs, but the passion is there. I still love it. You know, I absolutely love it. I love meeting the people and the details, and you know, cars like this are just, to me, absolutely amazing. You know, I love it when a GT3 turns up. Of course I do. I'm a Porsche fanatic, but to me there's so much more substance to that for me. You know what I mean? And that's it's been amazing. So I really appreciate you coming down, and we'll try and catch some images of the car and stuff, and let you get on with your weekend because I've took some of your time.
don't find any imperfections. I'm at a show tomorrow. Did I say? I think I said Trentham earlier. I didn't mean Trentham. I'm at Trentham tomorrow. There's a classic car show tomorrow.
Okay.
So unless it really rains, because like I say, I got annoyed the last time it went out. I can't even remember the place where it won an award. It's further up in Staffordshire. But I've been there for a few shows. But no, it's Trentham tomorrow. That's the first time I've been there tomorrow.
Yeah,
so
amazing.
We'll see. I'll drop you a message. If I go and it doesn't rain, we'll see how it does.
Be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, we don't want to go back to that last show where you had to spend God knows how long getting it back.
3 days.
Yeah.
Well, you know, in between work and doing other stuff, it was 3 days, and
it's never fun. So, but no, thank you again.
You're welcome. Good to see you again, Danny.
Yeah, I'm due, and we'll cut that off there. Hopefully it kept recording.